Well, hello. I'm so excited for this panel. I can't wait for you guys to hear what these brilliant collaborators have to share with all of us, including myself today. So, welcome. This is your GracePoint publishing team. Now, Jill has agreed to come on. She's not technically on the GracePoint team. However, she is part of our team because we love her so much. And so I'm going to go around and introduce each of these wonderful human beings to you. I'll start with Jill. Jill is a TEDx speaker coach. A speaker coach has a wildly popular podcast called Storyteller's Porch and can help you and me get our message out on a signature talk. So I'm going to go around and then I'll come back to each of you. Tasha is director of publishing at GracePoint Publishing, and she knows exactly when and how you can get the stuff in here into a physical book. So I know you all can't wait to hear what she has to say. And Mark is director of Number 3 Productions, and he works with audiobooks, podcasts, and helping you get your message out in an audio form. So we've got all different kinds of ways to get your message out. I am Michelle Vandepass, co-founder of GracePoint Publishing, and I love all of these methods. So welcome, panelists, and welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jill, let's start with you. Would you tell us just for a couple of minutes, like who you are and how you got to be a speaker coach?
Absolutely. And I laugh because you're asking a speaker coach and a speaker to just keep it to a couple minutes. So I am Jill Davis. I live in beautiful Colorado Springs, Colorado. I am the very proud mom of four kiddos and 2 grandkiddos, and I'm a speaker coach. And to even begin to explain to you how I got here is such a long story. We'll just make it a very short one today. I have been a coach for many, many years. I can't even count anymore, maybe 12 to 15, something like that. But I started speaking about 25 years ago publicly because my husband at the time was in the Air Force. And as a good Air Force spouse, I got on the stage a lot. And I talked to a lot of parents. And I learned a lot about connecting eye to eye, heart to heart, face to face with people. Over time I'm a serial entrepreneur. As a single stay-at-home mom, that was the best way to put food on the table and kind of keep me happy. And through that, I learned that every single business and every single person has a story. How they tell it and who they tell it to is what makes the difference. We can tell facts and a few people will listen, but when we tell a story, people perk up their ears, they come in close, and they remember. Stories are what we use to make sense out of the human condition. And what I do as a speaker coach when I contract with GracePoint is I work with your guests, your clients, your people to help them create that signature presentation that makes them memorable, not only in the way they present, but in the stories they tell. So people will want to buy their books and to purchase anything they have to offer, as well as helping to make the difference in the world that they want to do.
Love that. I can't wait to come back and ask you some questions. Thank you. Tasha, so what would you like to share with us about who you are and where you are in your journey as director?
Sure. So I'm also here in Colorado Springs. We're a whole panel of folks here in Colorado Springs. Sure. I have been some sort of business consultant or business coach for almost 30 years. It's been almost my whole professional life. And I've worked with corporations, I've worked with small businesses. One thing I learned probably 15 years ago is that a really great way to build credibility and help get your message out and get a little bit of notice from the people around you is to have a published book. And so I have been helping people in all sorts of areas that relate to that. Not just the book publishing, but with book publishing comes marketing, planning for book launches. How does the book fit into your message? How does that message help you in all the other things that you do, whether it's getting booked as a speaker, whether it's, getting your business out there. So I've been working in that for many, many years. And now I'm director of publishing here at GracePoint Publishing. So I oversee really the whole process, all the way from we have authors that are just wanting to get that message out there, but they don't even maybe consider themselves a writer yet, or they're not even sure quite what the message is. So taking that, nurturing that all the way through the writing process, all the doubts that come up, all of those things into beautiful finished books that are on shelves in bookstores in your hand that you can use to represent yourself.
Thank you, Tasha. And I have quite a few of them there in my bookshelf.
Yes.
Mark.
Hi, everyone. I
Hi.
am also in Colorado Springs. So we are all in Colorado Springs here, which is wonderful. I have a view of Pikes Peak outside my window. I do the audio and podcast production through Number 3 Productions, which is a division of GracePoint Publishing. So right next to Michelle's office. In terms of audio, I have been into music since I was 5, so 30 years. I have played music for 25 years. I've been a performer for 25 years. So that's my main thing that I bring to Number 3 Productions is a very deep understanding of audio and sound. It separates us a little bit. A lot of podcast producers are not musicians, which is totally fine. But our podcasts are based around rhythm and music and theme songs and the rhythm of the human voice. So we produce podcasts and audiobooks. We did 100 podcast episodes last year, 7 shows. And by the end of probably November, we'll have 9 audiobooks that have come out over the last year as well. So some really exciting things happening. In terms of more big level things with audio is in a really unique place right now. We've seen a lot of distribution change over, well, especially since COVID, right, over the last 2.5 years where we all went virtual. But ebooks took a huge turn. So that changed the entire publishing game, however long ago that was. And then audio is definitely making some new distribution waves as well. It's becoming very easy to get your auditory voice out into the world and get it out into really high quality. So that's what we do. Help you get your voice out and disrupt your voice, disrupt your world.
Yeah, disrupt our world, right?
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Mark. So that leads me into really the first question for all of us, which is, in our heads, for the clients and myself and anyone probably watching this, we have an idea. We have something that we want to share with the world. We have a calling, a purpose, a mission, whatever you want to call it, something that we want to get out. How do we choose whether it's a signature talk, a book, a podcast, or all of them? And if it's all of them, where the heck do we start? So I'm going to open that up to everybody. I'm going to invite Jill to start. If I can just call on you, Jill. But this question's open to everyone.
I'm happy to start. I will tell you, I was never the kid in the front of the classroom going, pick me, pick me. But when I'm called on, I'm happy to share with you. I have spent, like Tasha, many, many years in the world of business of needing a book. Everybody needs a book. That's what we were always taught. Everybody needs a book. I really think that's true, not just from marketing points. I believe we need a book because we all have something so important to say. It needs to be out there in the world. I'm not exactly sure which comes first, right? The book or the talk or the talk or the book or the podcast or, how they all work. I think they just work really well in tandem. And I know I have worked with several clients who don't yet have their book, and working through their signature presentation helps them to define, oh, here's my message. I was going to put this in the book, but really this is what I want in the book. And then I've worked really well with people who have a book out. They love that book. It had a place 5 years ago, but now they're ready to go the next step. And as we work together, they're writing their book, and that helps them create their signature presentation. I really think it's where the person is most comfortable starting. We all have a comfort level, and it's kind of scary to put ourselves. I mean, it was for me when I wrote my first book. It was super scary to put myself out there in the world and say, look, it's in print forever. And oh my gosh, there it is. Well, it's the same anymore with speaking. It's all over the internet. If you say something, it's there. But some people are more comfortable speaking things out. Some people are more comfortable writing it out. And I encourage my speakers to do both. So I think where we start is where we feel most comfortable. That's my opinion.
Tasha?
I definitely agree with that. I feel like each person that has a message has their preferred method of delivering it. And so some people feel like they want to be a little bit more behind the scenes. Maybe they want to work on that first without the thought of standing on stage, or maybe it's a podcast. Maybe they want to think about it in, shorter topics, the ability just to speak about it. I do definitely encourage people to think about what their comfort level is, where they may already have an audience. That's something to consider, which is, do you have people that you could get to come to a TED Talk? Do you have the ability to get through that? Or do you have more of a list of people that you could maybe get rallied to go to a bookstore and buy books, or come to a book signing or something like that? So it's important to also to understand your audience and where they consume information and where they're going to be willing to follow you.
Good point. I'm going to come back to that. Mark, I know that because I have insider info, you've actually published some podcasts and produced some podcasts this year from people who don't have books yet, and maybe haven't even thought about a book, or maybe the book is down the road. Talk to me about how that process has worked for them. Has choosing a podcast first been the right move for them?
For the two people I know you're talking about, I think it has been. So one of them is Ellen Hefty, who's one of our human design speakers at the conference last year, is publishing a human design book with us. We produced a microcast, we call it, for her. The best way to describe it, it's an 8-episode mini-series of 5 to 8 minute episodes. So it really forces you, just like you said, Jill, to cut your talk down. You have to cut your topics down into that place. And we did have a call to action in that episode to go to her teaching program. But she said the biggest benefit wasn't the publicity or the marketing that the podcast did. It was that it really narrowed her message down to what she wanted to talk about. And then the other person, her name is Lori Christine. Similar thing. She has more programs than Ellen did. She's not just kind of starting off like Ellen is. She's serial entrepreneur, been doing it for a long time. But she's told me that the podcast has really helped her get her momentum back. And then for both of them, I've told them that if they do want to write a book, well, they've already written the outline, so they're good to go to start writing the book next.
That's interesting, right? Because you help them really hone in and figure out 8 different mini messages, as you might say. So those could be chapters.
Right. It's an 8-chapter book.
Wow, that's cool. I like that. And then can that go from there into a talk, or would the talk go from there into a podcast, or what do you guys think? Or does it matter? Is it just depending where they are in their process?
I think a lot of it. Oh, sorry to talk over you. I think a lot of it depends on that particular person again, of what they feel the most comfortable with, because giving out our podcast, our talk, our book is such an internal thing that it has to be the thing that makes us feel most comfortable. And I feel like I can say this as a contractor, Michelle. GracePoint Publishing is one of the best publishing companies I've ever seen to help people feel secure in who they are as they move forward. It's not get it done, get it done, get it done. It's like, how can we support you in what you need to create what is most important in the world? And I don't sit in on all your meetings and hear all your things. I just feel it from all of you and from the people I work with. But like Mark said, that 8 mini-series mini-cast is perfect, or microcast is perfect to bring into me. I can cut that down, change it into 3 to 5 stories, and create their signature speech instantly. Tasha, how does that fit in with you with all the book stuff?
So it's also the perfect entry into a book, because you can take those 8 topics, create a thread between them, which probably already is there because they're in this series of microcasts, put them with an introduction, a conclusion, and that just on its own could be the basis for a book, or you might create a little bit more structure around that. But it's also just, perfect for if you want to just kind of what we would call like a calling card book, right? Like, I'm just going to take this and package it for people that are looking for that in a different way. We might ask you to build a little bit more story around each of those, or bring in some other examples, but it's a perfect place to start.
Tasha, you talked about platform earlier. and Lori, we've had a lot of discussions about this. I believe everybody has a voice and has the right to get their voice out, whether or not they have a platform, whether or not they want a platform. Maybe their book or their talk will help one person. But I got to tell you, a platform helps. And the yin and the yang of it all, it's really hard to get noticed these days on a platform. So, Tasha, I'm throwing this big ball of wet noodles to you. How do we unravel all of that and figure out if we need a platform, what kind of platform? How do we get seen?
So I want to be really clear that a platform just means that you're communicating your message and there are people out there that are hearing you. It doesn't have to be a big, fancy, you might, if you're in the business world and you're clicking around on the internet, you might see ads for ClickFunnels, messaging, setting up complicated things like Salesforce, being a six-figure, how to be a six-figure speaker, how to, all of those things, right? There's so much there about platform building. And your point is really valid, Michelle, which is sometimes our platform doesn't necessarily mean that we're speaking to 100,000 people. Sometimes it means that the right 5 people or 50 people heard that message and it impacted them. So having a platform just means that you have a place where you're really clear, your message is clear, and someone knows how they can connect with you, or they know how. I might know if I hear about someone, or I might hear the perfect thing for my sister to listen to, or for my friend to go read this book, right? I don't necessarily need to even have to be the consumer of that. I just need to know how to go find it and point them in that direction. So it's really just about clarity and a presence someplace. We would talk about, we talk about websites and email lists and all of those kind of things. Your website could be your Facebook page. It could be your social media. It could be, you could be on TikTok or you could be on Instagram. That could be your presence, as long as there's a way where someone can follow you or connect with you there. That's really what you need for your platform. So it can really, it can scale. Obviously, you can have all of those other things. And if you have lots of people following you and services that you want to get out into the world, then it helps to have that two-way communication. So building the email list helps. Having a way where people, if you're a speaker, having a way where they can come and find your topics and book you if they want to book you, that's very helpful. All of those are steps that you can take, but it really just starts with you deciding. I don't even want to say figuring out. You just sort of putting your stake in the ground and deciding, this is the space that I'm going to occupy. This is the message that I have. And this is how people can find me.
I love that. Mark, you released a singer. Well, he was already a singer, but released a new song. You helped actually a singer produce. You produced a song and released the song. I don't know what that's really called in your world. And it sort of blew up on Spotify. It did really well. So is that platform?
It could be. I think it's interesting if we start getting into, like you were getting into, things we can do with details of platform, Tasha. It's so easy to get lost into that and the semantics and the definition. So if you're a musician, that could definitely be a part of your platform. Just as a side thought, what was interesting about, so his name's Mark Elliott. He's been a singer for a long time. But we took him from 22 monthly listeners to, he just hit over 1,000 over the course of a year, which is a pretty good jump. With something like Spotify, it's not hard to get to 100. It's a little bit harder to get to 1,000. Next goal is 10,000, and then the Grammys at some point. But it's not that he hit, 1,000 listeners in the punk rock genre. He's more of a Frank Sinatra type singer. So sometimes you have to really make sure you set those goals of what you want to hit in that place. You don't want to try to start overreaching and going number one everywhere all the time. It's just like finding what's the one niche that works, what's the one place that works, and then it can start to expand from there. And that's what I've been working on with Mark a lot. It's like, let's start in our niche, and then we're going to start making it bigger and bigger and bigger.
My mom always used to say, do you want to be A big fish in a small pond, or a small fish in a big pond. And the older I get, the wiser that seems, right? That's how moms are. The older the kids get, the wiser the moms get.
I would love to hear Jill's take on when you're speaking and telling stories, because I'm a big believer that books and messages actually are more effective when they're a little bit more narrow. And lots of authors, if they come maybe through the self-help world or the business world, they want to, we talk with them early on about we mentioned this before, who is your audience? Who is your message for? And I hear a lot from people, everybody can benefit from this. My message is for, young and old and people from all different backgrounds. And I always sort of have to, modulate a little bit and say that it's great. It might be true that anybody who heard your message or read your message could benefit from it. And who is it really targeted to? Because there are going to be people that resonate with it more, people that are attracted to it more. So I'm curious, Jill, your perspective as a speaker coach about sort of focus and message.
I think that's such a great point. And I talk about it all the time. And I talk about the bell curve. I was not a great student, don't tell my kids, but I knew about a bell curve. And I knew if I could hit the middle of the bell curve, I'd be fine. And I teach my speakers, try to find the middle of the bell curve. That's your niche. That's the most specific person you're looking for. And then the outliers will show up. And your audience is essential. How you present yourself. You cannot make a choice on how you're going to present yourself until you have your audience. And the example that I use for that is as a public speaker, I spoke a lot about domestic violence. And the way that I would speak about domestic violence to a group of military spouses is very, very different than how I would do it if I was presenting to a room of academics. If I'm presenting to military spouses, I'm talking about my children and the impact domestic violence had on them and my friends. And I'm talking about their lives and how things work. Speaking to academics, 1 or 2 stories with lots of facts. You have to know your audience to know what to give them. The message is the same. Our message that we have internally really doesn't change. The impact we want to have in the world, this is my personal belief, is the purpose of our life. How we present it in the topics that we use are equivalent or need to be balanced to our audience. And so I really work in the very first ingredient in my speakers is who is your audience? You got to know your audience. And until you know your audience, and it's funny in social media, I'm going to go off on social media here for a second. I love social media. It's one of my favorite things, probably a little too much. But if I post something about my little farm in Kansas on Facebook, it blows up. People are commenting. I love, just so many comments. I'm 60 years old. I have a little farm in Kansas. But if I post the same thing on TikTok or Instagram, I think people just kind of like, what the heck? Because it's a totally different audience. And I think if we can look at how we present and how our message is given in the scope of equating it to social media, just decide, do you have a Facebook audience or do you have a TikTok audience? Or an OnlyFans audience?
So I have a question, because I think this is a really interesting point. Do we choose our audience? I have some thoughts on this, but I want to hear what you guys say. Do we choose our audience or do they choose us? So can I say, this is who I want to impact? Or do we just put our messages out and then the right people come? Tasha, you look like you have something to say.
Wow.
Or
I don't think I've ever heard that question in that way before. I think that when we put our message out in a certain way, we have to be aware of the impact. We have to understand that is going to attract people of a certain audience. So I think in a way, instead of picking, I like to use co-create, right? We co-create an experience with our audience. But I think in a way we don't, if you're putting your message out in the way that you believe this is the message I want to put out in the world, you don't necessarily have control over who that attracts. right? You can recalibrate if you don't, if you're thinking, oh, wait, that wasn't, maybe that had an impact that I didn't want, right? Then you could recalibrate and try to attract a different audience putting out in a different way. But I feel like the audience kind of chooses us in a way. And if you ask me on a different day, I might have a different answer, Michelle.
Yeah. Politicians are probably really good at this question.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Yeah. So we have a whole variety of people that like to work with GracePoint Publishing and work with Jill. How does somebody know if we're the right fit? So we're always talking about it's an energetic match. If it feels good, come work with us. Once in a while, not very often, we have someone talk to us and it's not really a fit. Like, what is it that they should ask? What do you think someone outside of us would ask to know that if it's a fit to work with us? Mark, you have any thoughts on that?
I feel like I'm playing Jeopardy and trying to form it as a question because I can always answer. So what actually comes to mind is, so my artistic background did not pay very well or at all, really, until I started with doing number 3 productions. So to pay the bills, I worked in restaurants, right? I worked for two restaurants. I worked for Chili's and I worked for Maggiano's. So Chili is very fast casual. I would like to say great service because I was a server there, but very quick, right?
Just to be clear, this was a while ago. This is
what? Oh yeah, this is not, no.
just so everybody knows, we're not making Mark work on the side. Yeah, okay.
I'm not moonlighting as anything right now. And then Maggiano's, while not like 5-star Michelin dining, was definitely more of a high-end restaurant than Chili's was. So I would say, you want to come work with us if you're looking for more of a Maggiano's type experience, because there's something to be said for the Chili's experience too. But I have talked to people who have been interested in saying, hey, I have a show all set up. Can you just distribute the episodes for me? And it just never seems to be a fit. It seems like the fit that we have are people who want to come in and want not for us to do the work, but to work with us on every aspect of the project. They don't want to just be in and out, just produce an episode for me. If you want to be very involved with the message, you want to trust us with a lot of your message and trust our expertise, you're probably going to be a really good fit for us.
So that goes back to what Tasha was saying earlier, co-create.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. It just doesn't seem to work either way. If the client wants to do, or our authors or our podcast shows want to do all of the work themselves, that doesn't seem to work. Or on the other side, if they want us to do all the work and just step out, and this is me just talking podcast and audiobooks, I won't speak to the other aspects. Those just for whatever reason don't always seem to stick. But when we're co-creating, that seems to be the people who we have the calls and we stay on and we keep working together for long periods of time.
Tasha, you have anything different or to add to that?
I love that example. I think that's really true. And that's very much true in publishing also, that when we have someone that really kind of has it all cooked and they just come in and say, hey, I just need a publisher. I just need you to do this last piece for me. Or they have in their head, they're very certain all the things that they want done, the way they want it to look, the cover, all of that's not necessarily a match, because we have our expertise, we have our experience. And so there's things that we're going to bring to the table. And so we want someone that is going to co-create with us. We want someone that's going to avail themselves of our expertise and our experience to say, this is my thought and this is my idea. What do you think, Michelle? What do you think, team? How can we make this better? How can we grow this? Where does this fit? Or, even with we talked before about the doubts that authors have, right? Even in that place where we can be that support and keep someone moving through because they have a vision, but maybe they have those self-limiting beliefs or the doubt that's going to hold them back, but they need a little bit of accountability. They need a little bit of support and someone to say, we believe in you and we know that it's tough, but we're going to stand here beside you on our way through this.
And when you get out the other side, it's usually like, whew, You did that.
Yes. Yeah.
Jill, I don't know if I ever told you the story. Before I did my TED Talk the night before, I was curled up in a ball trying to find an excuse to not show up. And I told my sister, you got to call them and just tell them I'm sick. I'm not going. And my sister talked me off the ledge. Do you find that happens much with speakers?
Oh, I think not only does it happen a lot, I think it's uncommon for it not to happen. I'm working with a speaker right now who's been speaking. She's been on the TEDx stage several times, and she's getting ready to do a Zoom production, a Zoom presentation. And I'm there to support her. She's having, a lot of nerves around it. And we just get nervous when we give ourselves to people. It's human nature.
And that's why all of us can help support and hold other people's dreams.
Mm-hmm.
So with so much honor and grace, I guess, to help other people get their message out. Mark, what are some last thoughts you'd like to leave with our audience today?
There was just a kind of a logistical thing that I do want to throw out that I think was important from earlier when we were talking about which one you should do first.
Yeah.
One thing that I do think is really interesting is that if you do have a signature talk and a presentation, you also do already have a podcast as long as you hit record during your presentation. So it's interesting if you start looking into the order that you can do things. There are some things that will translate pretty much automatically into an audio version, or vice versa when you do a podcast and you have a transcript. So I did want to make sure to put that out. I think we are in a pretty chaotic time in our world right now. I think we are also moving to hopefully a less chaotic time. There's a book coming out that I didn't do anything but read the back cover of it, but it's talking about how I think a lot of times we think we are at the pinnacle of humanity because we have done so many amazing things over the last 100 years. And his book is about how we are actually just at the start of humanity. And that completely switches the perspective of where we're at right now. And I think what we're seeing exploding in book publishing, in audio, in speaking, music creation, art distribution, anything that is in what we would consider classic creative art, is it is becoming so much easier to get past the traditional gatekeepers and get your voice out into the world in whatever format that is. If that's a book, if that's a podcast, if that's a signature talk, or whatever else it is too. So I think that's what's exciting about it. If you're watching this and saying, should I do this? One thing to know is now is the time to get your book out and actually have it be heard, because there's so many ways to get your voice out into the world.
Thanks, Mark. Tasha?
I'm gonna jump on that a little bit. So Mark was saying earlier also about the disruption in audio and et cetera. We have quite the disruption that started, 10 years, 15 years ago in publishing with self-publishing. And it's not stopped yet. There's still a lot of evolution coming. And we're a part of that. We're trying to see into the future to see where that's going, but also that's something that we support a lot as our authors, trying to figure out what are those ways to take this traditional method, a physical book where it's printed or on an electronic device, and figure out how we can get it in the hands of more people. And it's not something that you can do alone when you're doing that process. And a lot of people go right along, they need quiet, et cetera. But that whole process is definitely one of co-creation. And it's one of, if you're in a vacuum or you're just going to produce something and put it out in the world, you don't know what that impact is going to be. But when you have a team around you, you really get that support in figuring out what are the changes, what's going to make it better, what's going to keep improving this, to get into your audience, which is really the thing that we're focused on doing.
Thank you, Tasha. Jill?
I just love hearing all of this. It makes my little heart warm. One of the things as I listen to you talk, Michelle, I have, because of my life path, lots of people who want to write books, who want to get a podcast out. Usually they don't come to me in a personal manner to do their signature presentation because they know I'll kind of push them to do it. But they'll ask me, who should I contact as a publisher? I just got a call this weekend from a dear friend of mine. I wrote this book. I illustrated this book. Who should I contact? And I always say, of course, GracePoint Publishing. And then they say, well, why do you think they're the best? And you gave me the best one I've ever heard, Michelle. I, from now on, will always say, I really recommend GracePoint Publishing. Their team can hold your dream.
Mm.
It even rhymes.
Oh, I didn't mean to do that. We should maybe change that.
No.
They really, you hold dreams. You
We do.
have the ability to hold a dream and bring it to fruition.
Mm.
That's the part that amazes me.
I appreciate you all being with us here today. If anyone listening or watching has questions, you can email publisher@gracepointpublishing.com. We hope that this has inspired you, has activated your inner knowing that if you've not started working on getting your message out into the world, but you know you have one, to just start making some notes, reach out to any one of us. We love you, and I love all of you guys. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks.